After successfully guiding Singapore to their first Asian Cup finals appearance since 1984, after they defeated Hong Kong 2-1 in the winner takes all penultimate group qualifier earlier this month, Gavin Joshua Lee Peng, or Gavin Lee as he's better known to the wider football community, is now Singapore's men's national team head coach on a permanent basis after he put pen to paper on a full-time contract in a press conference held at the Football Association of Singapore headquarters earlier today. And as he now begins his preparations as the men's national head coach in earnest with just over a year before the Asian Cup 2027 finals in Saudi Arabia, Tanyaja attempts to take a look at his career profile to how he got there and what are the challenges and issues that he has to face in that year-long span in the lead up to Singapore's second ever AFC Asian Cup finals appearance and the first time on merit. So, when it comes to Gavin Lee, he's much better known in the Singaporean football community, but a bit less so in the wider Southeast Asian or Asian, until as interim head coach, he successfully guided the Lions to a 2-1 victory that secured qualification ahead of Hong Kong, China, or by virtue of a better head-to-head record. And how did he get this far? As an alumnus of Victoria School and Victoria Junior College and a graduate of sports science from Singapore University, Nanyang Technological University, Gavin actually had a brief playing career as a young boy. He first started out at the Tampines Rovers kids age group teams where his father was one of the coaches in the Singaporean club's youth setup, and he eventually enrolled in the National Football Academy, where he rose the way up to the under 14 or under 15 age group. And curiously, in that age group, many of his cohort would actually be involved in the 2006 AFC Under 17 Asian Cup Finals, which was actually held in on home soil. And among his teammates that he grew up with, playing together, were Asian Cup qualification heroes, goalkeeper Izwan Mahmud, and captain and FAS vice president Haris Harun, both of whom were star players and also the highlights in that 2006 campaign on home soil, where under Kadeyaya, the Cubs actually held Japan to a 1-1 draw and performed credibly in their opening 1-3 loss to South Korea, where Gabriel Kwak Jun Yi scored an incredible long-range goal from the left wing before wrapping up their campaign with a 0-0 draw with Nepal to exit the group stage in third place. And after seeing that he was not able to match up with the level of his national youth team colleagues, he eventually continued to play at school level and in university, and subsequently was involved with the Singapore Cricket Club National Football League, now Singapore Football League, semi-professional team between 2012 and 2014. So, after that brief period on his playing career, he actually began his coaching career as a young boy at the age of 16, where he actually helped his father Lawrence in a football camp at Broadrick Secondary School, laying out cones in preparation for the training sessions that will be held during that camp. And he progressed to working through the various age group teams in the JSSL or the JSSL, a preeminent Singaporean youth football academy that organizes what is widely recognized as one of the best youth tournaments in Southeast Asia in the JSSL sevens. reaching to the post of general manager at the age of 25 in 2016. He had his first foray into senior club coaching as an assistant coach at Warriors FC, formerly known as Singapore Armed Forces FC, and he played a vital part in assisting then head coach Alex Weaver in winning the S League, now Singapore Premier League Championship in 2014. Their first league success since the four in a row in the mid 2000s, mid to end 2000s. And after leaving as Warriors at the end of the 2015 season, he subsequently joined Tampines Rovers as the assistant coach in December 2017, and subsequently was promoted to head coach in October 2018 after the club removed Jurgen Rapp from his post following their fourth place finish in the Singapore Premier League. And during his time in Tampines Rovers between 2019 to 2024, Gavin Lee's more notable achievements came early in his reign when he helped the Stags win the 2019 Singapore Cup and 2020 Singapore Community Shield. And in 2021, under his guidance, Tampines Rovers became the second ever Singaporean team to feature in the Asian top level competition, AFC Champions League, now renamed as the AFC Champions League Elites, where he led the team through the group stage, where their group was then located in a centralized venue in Uzbekistan. And then in March 2024, he became part of the backroom team under his predecessor, Japanese head coach Tsutomu Ogura, and took charge on a caretaker capacity for the first time in Singapore's 1-3 loss to Thailand in the World Cup qualifier in June 2024 after Ogura was taken ill, and eventually became interim coach in June 2025 after Ogura left to take up a post in the GFA Technical Committee. And the rest, they say, is history. So, having gone through quite in a way, I compress as much as possible on Gavin Lee's playing and coaching career and who he is. Now that he is now the new permanent head coach, the main two tournaments he will oversee during his 18-month contract will be the 2026 ASEAN Championship, which will be known as the ASEAN Hyundai Cup. That is the biennial Southeast Asian national team level championships, which for the first time ever will be shifted to the mid-year calendar following the adjustment of the majority of the Southeast Asian leagues into, usually you can say the European, but more in our context, the Arab league plan, where you play from autumn to spring or late spring or early summer, to put it. So this will be the first time between July to August next year that the ASEAN Championship will be played during this period, with the tournament format set to be unchanged. Now, the second one obviously will be the 2027 Asian Cup Finals in Saudi Arabia. Singapore will be in pot 4 regardless of the final outcome against Bangladesh on 31st of March, as they are one of the lower ranked teams heading into this competition. And while we do not know whose Singapore group opponents will be, the work is going to be effectively cut out. As one of the lowest ranked teams in the finals, Singapore is not expected to go that far in the Asian Cup Finals to be able to achieve what their 1984 predecessors did under the emergence of the then D. Tokijan with Razali Sad, a former FAS vice president, who actually was the team's top scorer with 2 goals, beating India 2-0 and holding Iran to a 1-1 draw in the 1984 Asian Cup held in Singapore in December that year, the then Singapore team that took part in the Asian Cup were then missing quite a few key figures. Most controversially, no Fandi Ahmad in the Asian Cup because despite all the back and forth between the supposed Fandi's manager and FAS over his availability because he was then playing for Groningen in the Netherlands, but towards his second season at Dutch club in June that year or in the autumn that year, Fandi was used more as a substitute. So that back and fro eventually resulted in Fandi controversially not being included in the Asian Cup squad under Hussein Aljunin. V. Sundramoorthy at that period was also absent because of national service. In fact, like what Gavin has right now, in 1984, with Singapore not participating in the Malaysia Cup as part of that brief suspension period or ban following the fiasco in the 1981 Malaysia Cup final. So Singapore arranged quite a number of international tournaments to get the national team to prepare. But with Jita Singh quitting abruptly in the middle of the year owing to business commitments, it was the late Hussein Aljunin who took over the mantle. He recalled Ling Tambung from International Wilderness. He promoted Daris Zufitomo Tokijan to become one of the best strikers of his generation in the 1980s. That was where Tokijan made his Singapore debut in the Malayan Cup that year and also featured prominently and made a big impression on Dr. Joseph Vanglos in the 1984 Asian Cup finals as their top striker in the absence of Fandi and Sundram. There was David Lee, there was Malik Awab, and there Awyong Pakwan was the team captain. Terry Padmanabhan was able to join the team. I think one of the two Bang players did not feature due to injury in that tournament. Not sure it's Padmanabhan or Surya, but it was fraught with all kinds of drama, even in the national team build-up. So if I go through the history from the book which I co-wrote from Raw Football Legends of Singapore, so this was actually what happened during the Asian Cup preparation in that year. So apart from the absence of Fandi and Sundram, key midfielder Salim Moy was actually on a 6-year suspension after he hit the referee in a domestic game the previous year. So with a key midfielder out of the competition and 1980 Malaysia Cup final goal scorer Leong Kok Fan, he pulled out the national team due to his own work commitments. And the preparations that year in 1984 was actually pretty extensive. So when I go back to what I helped to wrote or edit for Tiaga Raju for the Raw Football Legends of Singapore book that was published on 31st of August 2022, this was what was written then actually, because they actually had a series of international tournaments. They got the Anchor Cup, Ovaltine Cup, the annual series, the then annual series between Singapore and Malaysia, the Malayan Cup, and then they actually, after the Malayan Cup, they went on friendly matches. They played friendly matches against Qatar. They went on a short training camp to Brunei where they played 2 friendlies, and more controversially, just weeks before the Asian Cup finals in December, they actually make a contentious trip to Guangzhou to play in this tournament called the White Cloud Cup, which involved the port cities from Japan, Singapore, China, and Hong Kong. So in that tournament, half the squad and officials went down with a flu bug, and one of the players remained in the squad despite returning from China with an injury. So at that time, despite the extensive preparations, they were less systematic and squads in that era were not announced in advance. So it was really touch and go for the Lions until the team finally took to the pitch to play their opening group game against India for their debut Asian Cup Finals game. So that squad, if I recall, pardon, allow me to say the results, then the squad that played. That squad, well, they began with a 2-0 win over India, but they lost to China 0-2 and the United Arab Emirates 0-1 before they finished with 1-1 draw to finish fourth out of five teams in Group B. So that Asian Cup squads they had in the 1984 Asian Cup finals, they had David Lee obviously as the first choice goalkeeper, having been involved in the 1980 Malaysia Cup victory. Their captain of the day was Lim Tang Boon. Derry Padmanabhan was in the squad, but not R. Suriamurthy, who was injured. Malik Awab was also in the squad as well, who would later feature prominently in Kuala Lumpur's 3-in-a-row campaign alongside fellow Asian Cup teammate K. Kanan and Fandi. Then there was not just Tokijan, but there was Razali Sa was then playing in midfield. So that squad had a number of players, a few experienced old heads, and a number of up and coming young ones, and a few who are there possibly for the experience, even though preparations were not ideal. So, what does that mean for Gavin as he prepares Singapore for the Asian Cup finals that will be held in Saudi Arabia in January 2027? Well, firstly, the first thing that he needs to do is to ensure that much of his squad remains intact. Yes, there will be the inevitable personnel changes at times due to injury, due to, you can say, possibly a loss of form at club level, but usually through injury. So at this stage, it's all about keeping the key members who are involved in the Asian Cup qualification success as often as possible. And that was the strategy that Kadir Yaya used when he led the Cups in the AFC Under-17 finals in Singapore in 2006 and also in the 2010 inaugural Youth Olympic Games football tournament. So in both cases, he kept the squad together for a substantial period of time. And in 2006, with the then support of technical director P.N. Sivaji, Kadir was able to conduct extensive training sessions with his no-nonsense approach, and that was where he was able to eke out the best out of the likes of Haris, Izwan, Gabriel Kwok Jun Yi, Isdin Shafiq, Afiq Yunos, among several others who would eventually become national team players in the 2010s, and also feature, ironically, quite prominently for Lions 12 in between 2012 to 2015. Then for the Youth Olympic Games, it was also the same. It's like he took over after the death of the former under 14 head coach V. Sivalingam. And with extensive training camps especially the one in England in May, where they beat the Tottenham youth team in the lead up, this gave the young Cubs a lot of confidence as they perform credibly on home soil to bring home the bronze medal in the 2010 Youth Olympic Games, with Abdullah Noor as the assistant and Yaakob Hashim as the goalkeeper coach. Now, these are positive examples on how having sustained preparation with a good core of team with good planning could lead the team to somewhere. Then what about preparations that went nowhere? Because to be fair, Singapore's senior national team's qualification to the 2027 Asian Cup finals was only Singapore's second ever successful Asian qualification campaign since Abdullah Noor led the Singapore under-16s to the successful qualification campaign for the 2008 AFC Under 16 finals in China in 2007. However, what happened next would be the copybook that FAS would do well never to repeat again. The acting technical director Tay Ping Kee, after the after the cup successfully qualified for a second successive under 16 finals, Tay Ping Kee took the matter into his own hands to demote Abdullah Noor, the head coach who provided qualification, to assistant with a new head coach, Masanaga Kageyama of Japan, being hired to replace him. And in 2008, after a disastrous Asian Lion City Cup, where they lost to all their international opponents in the group stage, including a 0-10 thrashing to UAE, Tay Ping Kee and Masanaga Kageyama cut around half the squad that helped Abdullah Noor qualify for the Asian finals. And imagine halfway through the preparation period, you chop more than 10 players. Think about that. That was exactly what happened in Singapore in 2008. And unsurprisingly, Kageyama's boys only played one more friendly game against Japan in a Japan pre-tournament training camp before losing all three games by heavy scores in Uzbekistan. In short, that kind of chop and change preparation period saw Tay Ping Kee and Masanaga Kageyama destroy an entire generation of young footballers who included subsequent Singapore international Shafiq Ghani and a few others who managed to survive for a few more years in senior level football before calling quits altogether. Among them, Stanley Ng, Kenneth Chang, I think Muhaimin Salim. These are the very few, or even Fazli Ayub. These are the very few who managed to progress on after what happened in Uzbekistan in 2008. So, having shown the two classic cases on how to prepare for a tournament and how not to prepare for a tournament, Gavin Lee, that first step was done correctly to provide the continuity, to provide the stability, and I do expect much of the backroom squad to stay the same. I do expect one or two changes. Firstly, I do expect a foreign fitness coach to help the national team players build up higher fitness levels in anticipation of what is expected. It's one thing to play against Hong Kong, India, Bangladesh, or even in Southeast Asia. But when you are playing against Middle East teams, or if they are drawn against South Korea, Japan, or Australia, or Iran, they will need to have higher fitness levels to at least compete for the full 90 minutes in a group stage game where the intensity will be higher, the quality of play will be sharper and more intense, and little mistakes would be pounced upon. And having a foreign fitness coach will be crucial in raising the levels in the way that Alexander Bonzenko somehow managed to do that year. Now, but Noor Rahman, who is currently holding this role, still has value in the national coaching squad because Noor Rahman is an experienced former international player. He is currently the Tampines Rovers head coach. He knows what the international game is all about. So his contribution is still very valuable for the national team backroom staff alongside Fahrudin Mustafiz to assist Gavin Lee in his preparations. Now, the more headache part will be, how about the goalkeepers? Izwan Mahmud is going to be the obvious top first choice goalkeeper. Hassan Sani has recently said that he is willing to come out of retirement to play a supporting role, which is actually a good thing because Hassan is still quite active in the Singapore Premier League with Albrechts Niigata Singapore, which, by the way, will be renamed to Albrechts Jurong from 1st of January 2026. Then you have the usual two backup goalkeepers, Rudy Kairula and Shazam Buhari, who who have been the ever presence in this Asian Cup campaign despite not playing a game. The easy dilemma will be keep the three, but for me, keeping the three is not the issue. Do I actually trust the current national team goalkeeper coach to do the job? My answer is straightforward, no. Ramesh Pal Singh, yes, he has been the national goalkeeper coach for several years. I think especially since 2019. But if not for Hassan Sani's own training and Izwan Mahmud's regaining of confidence at Lion City Sailors after a few years in the doldrums due to injury, loss of form, and also the misadventures in Thailand, Izwan Mahmud finally got back to somewhere near the level that he used to be at when he was at Lions 12 at the peak of his career. So, on Ramesh Pal Singh, what has he exactly done for Singapore football in the goalkeeping sense? Unlike Gavin Lee, who actually have youth playing experience, Ramesh Pal has never been in the national youth team. He has never played league football. He's actually not even played. And don't need to say that he's never played a single national team game. But he's collected all the relevant coaching certificates, all the way up to the Scottish FA goalkeepers coach diploma. I mean, in a way, it's credible, but he has never produced a single goalkeeper that has gone on to play for the national team. Never. Secondly, with the increasing sophistication of the game, the goalkeeper coach is becoming a very specialized position the way the fitness coach has done. So, what about the goalkeeper coach? If one has never really been a goalkeeper to play the game, how is he able to teach the goalkeepers on what to do on certain situations? I admit, when it came to social media posts criticizing him, both goals happened when Izwan conceded during this qualifying campaign. But I will say this, it is also down to the teachings of the goalkeeper head coach. A previous goalkeeper head coach, notably Libby Singh, John Burridge, they have had extensive playing careers to know what was needed in game situations because they had been through the hard grind as goalkeepers themselves. For B. Singh and Burridge, albeit in different bygone eras, but they knew what goalkeeping was really all about. What about Ramesh Pal Singh? You can say he signs up as what someone told me in a social media comment, sign sampai mati. Really, I do think a change in goalkeeper coach is essential if we are to push Izwan to as high a level as possible before the Asian Cup finals. It is undoubtedly pretty certain throughout much of Izwan's playing career that the tougher the opponent, the bigger the occasion, the more Izwan rises up to the occasion. But is Ramesh Pal Singh the right coach for this? No. Simply no. So, I think what Gavin may have to do is he may have to dispatch his long-time associate to find a more credible goalkeeping coach, in particular to help Izwan rise up to the occasion in what is expected to be his final tournament hurrah, alongside the two substitute goalkeepers, whether it's Sarjan Buhari, Rudy Kairula, or even a wildcard young goalkeeper who may be in contention for the third choice goalkeeper slot, Azil Yazid, the son of former national goalkeeper Yazid Yassin, who, in spite of the very weak generation of young players before, he's possibly the only contender to be one of the very few contenders from the under 23s and below to make that push up to the national team. So, on that front of the national goalkeeper coach, this is where I think a change needs to be made for the goalkeeper coach and throwing a new goalkeeper to see who among Shazam Buhari, Rudy Kairula, and Azil Yazid to join Izwan on the plane to Saudi Arabia. And then there are some comments on social media that I saw after the qualification. A few spoke about naturalization. I'm going to say something in Singapore's context that may disappoint some of them. Okay, so in this context, naturalization is not I mean, it really follows this typical Singaporean bureaucracy where they have to fill up the forms and they have to declare that through parent heritage that they have permanent residency before eventually become Singapore citizens. Only by becoming Singapore citizens will Perry Ng be eligible to play. Because technically under FIFA rules, Perry Ng is already eligible to play through his grandfather, who was born in Singapore and had spent much of his life in Singapore. I'm talking about the grandfather. The Cardiff City fullback, who currently plays in League One in the English league system, has trained with the Singapore national team on a few occasions under the reign of Sutomo Ogura. So he's not unfamiliar with the national squad. So I think the next step is really to make plans for him to become citizen so that he can make his international debut, if too late by the Bangladesh game, perhaps on time for the ASEAN Championship, which may see a tug of war between the national team and Cardiff City, who are expected to need him for their pre-season preparations along the same period. But taking that first step towards the citizenship, having gotten his permanent residency, and I think last year or the year before, this is the next step. So, apart from Harry Ng, who should be Singaporean by the time the Asian Cup comes around, what next for the other potential Singapore eligible players? Not so straightforward. It is not like the national registration, the national immigration authorities, which in Singapore's context is the Immigrations and Checkpoints Authority, will just simply allow a quick process of naturalization the way unfortunately Malaysia had done with those 7 players, in that how to become a citizen in 1 day, or even better, I mean 1 week, or even better, 1 day. So in Singapore process, it takes quite a number of steps to reach there, and also with through FA support, through government support. But from what we know, the Singapore government or authorities do want the naturalized citizen to be committed to Singapore even after his playing days are over. So for the rest of the potential Singapore eligible players, including Kai Withmore, who also plays in the professional English league system with Newport County, that process unfortunately may be a little too late. I do expect only Perry Ng to make the cut. Luke O'Neill has not shown any notable interest, despite being the grandson of former Singapore Minister Lim Kim San. I do not see Luke O'Neill, the current Sunderland captain, being part of the Singapore national team by the time the Lions fly to Saudi Arabia. So when it comes to the naturalization process, we do expect Perry Ng to be the major notable inclusion, alongside already South Korean born Song Woo-young and Japanese born midfielder Kyoga Nakamura. But Singapore already has a different type of mixed blood players that have been playing. They have lived in Singapore for much of their lives, they have played in Singapore for much of their lives, they have grown up in Singapore and have done their national service for much of their lives. That misconception of those players, notably the Steele brothers Rian and Harris, Jordan Emiwawe, Abdul Razak Hakim, and Jacob Mahler, All these guys, they have foreign blood, or even the Fundy brothers who have South African blood. But they are all born and bred in Singapore, even though they have a foreign father or mother. They have never abandoned Singapore in their growing up years. And they have played in Singapore for much of their life. They have already fulfilled their national service commitments. And I've seen in foreign media reports where they mistaken the Stewart brothers or others because they don't look the typical Singaporean as foreign born, which is totally inaccurate. So it's because of this type of players that Singapore now has. That's why our national team is able to still have some kind of shape in it. I mean, imagine if we do not have these type of players, would Singapore have been even be in a decent position to qualify from what is potentially a qualifying group of death that included Hong Kong, India, and Bangladesh? Notably, Bangladesh, who had no included foreign-born heritage players in recent years, notably Hamza Chowdhury, who also plays in the English league system. So, I do expect only Perry Ng to be the major change in the team that qualified for the Asian Cup. And possibly like Malaysia's Dion Kus, Perry Ng, should he feature for the national team in the Asian Cup, he will be expected to play in a more central role compared to the right fullback position. That said, how Gavin Lee is going to deploy is going to be the key. The AFF could be the time where he could experiment with a few tactical adjustments or tweaks, but I do not expect a major overhaul in squad at all. He's loyal to the players that he has kept faith with. He's not going to abandon them just because critics are going to be quite loud, especially when Singapore's results next year are not going to go their way in the lead up to it. Because as history has shown, even Chu Seng Kui, Singapore's greatest ever national team head coach, has endured such barracking in the lead up to the 1978 World Cup qualifiers that was held in Singapore in 1977. Those bad results eventually sharpened and forged the players to become credible, and they were one step from reaching the final round of qualifying for the World Cup, only to lose to Hong Kong 0-1 in that final. So, I don't expect major changes where this is concerned. Now, moving on to naturalization and all these things, I think there's also the drama. The first battle is already won with the full backing of Forrest Lee, so there will be nobody in the middle management who will try to want to interfere and try to be clever the way Tebeki did in 2008 and get in a coach, Japanese head coach Masanaga Kageyama, who ended up destroying an entire generation. This has been eliminated. So Forrest is going to keep with his man whatever it takes, because the ultimate goal is really the Asian Cup in 2027. Winning may not be a priority, especially if more Southeast Asian nations qualify for the Asian Cup. Because for them, this will be a stepping stone towards the preparation towards Asia. And possibly, I think for those who are involved, Indonesia would definitely miss some of their Dutch-based players for the ASEAN Championship, because for those Dutch-born players who are still playing Europe and America, it clashes with their club pre-season schedules. So you will not see the likes of Jay Itzes and the like in the ASEAN Championships next year, depending who the head coach for the Garudas will be. Now, so there is that ASEAN Championship, but what about after Bangladesh? How about the June friendlies? How about the September friendlies and the November friendlies? These friendlies could well be key to how Singapore is going to prepare for the Asian Cup, and also a pre-tournament training camp. How is Gavin Lee going to prepare the Lions, especially with the league season for next year, 26-27, is expected to be paused for at least a month to ensure that Singapore has total concentration towards the Asian Cup finals in Saudi Arabia. How is Lee going to prepare the team? Are they going to play just easy level just to get the results first, or are they going to play tougher opponents because they will need that kind of training, that kind of momentum ahead of the group stage where every game is expected to be a battle? And how are they going to arrange their opponents, especially after the Asian Cup group draw? Will the opponents of the groups that will have either Indonesia or either Vietnam or Malaysia decide that, okay, to simulate playing against them, will Singapore be a suitable opponent? More likely yes than no. And likewise for Singapore, what type of opponents will Singapore need to prepare for the group stage at least to ensure that it is as good as possible ahead of the actual test in January 2027? Having the right fixtures, having the right friendly opponents will be crucial. And using the ASEAN Championship to fine tune, especially if they somehow end up together with either Indonesia or possibly either Vietnam or Malaysia in the same group, or China. Yes, I know. It is possible that you need this kind of competitive experience, competitive exposure to get those boys ready for that stage. And finally, apart from Forrest Lee, apart from Desmond Ong, the top two in the current FAS Council, nobody else should come in and intervene in Gavin Lee's decision making alongside the backroom staff, and especially not Ramesh Pal Singh, even if he stays on as the goalkeeper coach. For this goalkeeper coach has had the knack of interfering before under the Japanese coaches. So that's why it's pretty important that these that preparations should not be interfered, whether through the good times or the bad times next year, as this rather rough ride in 2026 we'll see how the squad will prepare. Then talking about the final composition of the squad, apart from Perry Ng, the possible newcomer, Irfan Fandi, if he starts to focus more on his football and gets himself fit, he should be in contention for a place in the final 23 men squad for Saudi Arabia. Most of the players are already almost there already. Just a few more positions to be handled. I don't think, apart from the goalkeeper, I don't think any outfield player from the under 23s downwards will be promoted just to make up the numbers, because majority of them are really not good enough at this level. Majority. It's bad news when it comes to Singapore youth football, but this is what we have at this moment. And you want your national team to be as strong as possible. Hassan Sani could be a good fit as a number 2 or number 3 goalkeeper. And already he has clarified, because of certain clickbait media, that he's not intending to usurp Izwan as number 1. He's going to be there to support Izwan, which is not a bad thing. Hassan has been in supporting goalkeeper roles before, so he knows how it's like, and he's willing to do it given his age. Now, then your defenders largely set, midfielders largely set, forwards also largely set, especially the Fandi brothers in Iksan and Ilhan. I expect them to be in the final 23-man squad in fitness permitting and without injuries. So I do expect many of those names involved to stay there. Will there be any outstanding raw talent that will suddenly emerge to be put his name in contention? Given the current climate of youth development in Singapore, I strongly doubt it. I really doubt it. So I do see you will say the same group of players who will play for Singapore in the Asian Cup finals in Saudi Arabia. And given that qualification is now secure, those players for next year, they will want to perform as well as they can to keep themselves at least at a good level, whether they are playing in Singapore or Thailand, to ensure that they are at least at the baseline conditioning ahead of the final training camp, ahead of the ASEAN Championship, so that they will really show what they are really made of, and they will show what they can do as best as they can. Daniel does not expect Singapore to go beyond the group stage, but it is expected that under Gavin Lee, we will see a much more stable preparation build up, barring any sudden political mechanizations in the boardroom. And he will be trusted through thick and thin over what he has done as interim head coach to continue the work. At least for certain, Gavin will not change more than 10 members of the squad that helped him qualify for the Asian Cup. So we can breathe easy. Even if we somehow lose all 3 games, it will be because this is only our Singapore's level. And Singaporeans will gladly accept it. But not like the way how Teh Ping Kee and Pasar Naga Kageyama destroyed, I repeat, destroyed the Shafiq Ali cohort in 2008. With this squad that will go to Saudi Arabia, I believe, even though it's going to be quite a topsy-turvy 2026, but as long as those foundations are stable, I think we will see competent Singapore performances in the Asian Cup group stage. Whatever the result is, competent. That shows that what is really Singapore football. And that is the least Singapore can ask for from this national team.